Tuition fees are charged by universities and colleges to cover key elements of your course and academic life, as well as core services related to students' well-being and experience on campus. Tuition fees normally cover lectures, seminars, and tutorials. Course admin costs. Access to course-related facilities and equipment, e.g. laboratories, studios. Access to campus libraries and computer rooms. Support services for students. Student union membership. Field trips essential for completion of your course, travel and accommodation only. Graduation ceremony. However, tuition fees won't usually cover printing or photocopying at libraries or IT facilities. Non-compulsory field trips. Textbooks and other course materials, e.g. art supplies, danceware. Personal technology, e.g. laptop, tablet, specialist software, camera, and accessories. Membership to union clubs and societies. Travel costs to work placements. Professional body membership. Living costs, e.g. accommodation, travel. Graduation attire, photography, and guest tickets. If you're unsure if something is covered by your tuition fees, or if you'll have to pay for it, ask your university or college. Tuition payments, usually known as tuition in American English and as tuition fees in Commonwealth English, are fees charged by education institutions for instruction or other services. Besides public spending, by governments and other public bodies, private spending via tuition payments are the largest revenue sources for education institutions in some countries. In most developed countries, especially countries in Scandinavia and continental Europe, there are no or only nominal tuition fees for all forms of education, including university and other higher education. Payment methods. Some of the methods used to pay for tuition include scholarship, bursary, company sponsorship or funding, grant, government student loan, educational 7, private, family, parental, money, savings. A number of countries, such as South Africa, the United States and the United Kingdom, have upfront tuition policies. These policies generally include a tuition fee that is large enough to give parents or guardians a responsibility to cover some portion of their children's higher education costs. This responsibility can make it difficult for a low-income student to attend college without requiring a grant or one or more loans. College tuition in the United States is one of the costs of a post-secondary education. The total cost of college is called the cost of attendance, or, informally, the sticker price, and, in addition to tuition, can include room and board and fees for facilities such as books, transportation, or commuting provided by the college. In Lithuania, the highest tuition is nearly €12,000 and 37% of the students pay. Tuition fees in the United Kingdom were introduced in 1998, with a maximum permitted fee of £1,000. Since then, this maximum has been raised to £9,000, more than €10,000, in most of the United Kingdom. However, only those who reach a certain salary threshold pay this fee through general taxation. The UK state pays for the poorest or low income to access a university, thus university attendance remains high. There are record levels of disadvantaged people accessing a university. Scotland and Wales have abolished tuition. There are no scholarships and the only assistance is a possible loan from the government. French tuition fees are capped based on the level of education pursued, from €183 per year for undergraduate up to €388 for doctorates. Some public universities have autonomous status, meaning that they can charge much higher tuition, and all private universities charge tuition. In the German education system, almost all universities and most universities of applied sciences are funded by the state and do not charge tuition fees. In exceptional cases, universities may offer courses for professionals, e.g. executive MBA programs, which may require tuition payment. Some local governments have recently decided that students from non-EU countries can be charged, although Erasmus students, students from developing countries and other special groups are exempt. In addition, Some private institutions of higher education run on a tuition-based model. All Nordic countries provide higher education free of charge to their own citizens. The Nordic education systems are almost entirely publicly funded. In Nordic countries, education is seen as a civil right and a public service rather than a commodity. The issue of education is seen in these countries as an issue of equality. This is in part because high levels of education are a benefit to the development of society, including business and industry. In Greece there are no tuition fees as bachelor-level higher education and some master-level postgraduate education is provided for free to all Hellene, Greek, citizens as a benefit of citizenship paid by taxes. Universities accept students who have excelled at high school, with the selection being done through the Pan-Hellenic examinations, a system of state-administered examinations. Furthermore, it is difficult for mature students to be accepted at universities. Doctorate-level higher education is often also provided for free, but some universities may charge fees for PhD degrees. Students may resort to registering at private universities, called colleges, Kappa Omicron Lambda Gamma Iota Alpha, which charge tuition fees, or emigrate to other countries in order to get an education. In Spain, public universities' fees are established annually by laws enacted by the governments of each autonomous community, following a series of basic criteria dictated by the central government and published in the official state gazette. Tuition is charged at different rates from one type of institution to the next. Net tuition indices mark an increase in the relative real burden for payments at various types of institutions for higher education, in the period between 1980 and 1995, example, this burden increased by approximately 80% for students at public universities and by 148% for students at private universities. More than half of public research universities charge students differential tuition based primarily on their major and their year in college, increasing normal tuition by up to 40%. Most students or their families who pay for tuition and other education costs do not have enough savings to pay in full while they are in school. Some students must work or borrow money to afford an education. In the United States, student financial aid is available to defray the cost of a post-secondary education. Financial aid is typically thought to exert the most influence in attendance, when admitted students consider whether to enroll in a particular institution. It is often the case that the lower the cost of the school, the more likely a student is to attend. Developed countries have adopted a dual scheme for education, while basic, i.e. high school, education is supported by taxes rather than tuition. Higher education usually requires tuition payments or fees. People may purchase tuition insurance to protect themselves from fees related to involuntary withdrawal, illness, death of a parent or guardian, etc. In medieval Europe, universities were mainly institutions of the Catholic Church. As they mainly trained clergy, most of these universities did not have any need to exact fees from the students with one notable exception. During the 12th century, while under the supervision of Pierre Le Manger, the University of Paris began collecting 2 sous weekly in tuition. Later, the main duty of universities in most Protestant countries was the training of future civil servants. Again, it was not in the interest of the state to charge tuition fees, as this would have decreased the quality of civil servants. On the other hand, the number of students from the lower classes was usually kept in check by the expenses of living during the years of study, although as early as the mid-19th century there were calls for limiting the university entrance by middle-class persons. A typical family, however, could not afford educating a child or young adult, even if the education itself was free. A similar situation exists today in many third-world countries, where the expenses of free schooling, food, books, school uniform, etc., prevent some children from attending any school. After World War II, the tuition systems of all of today's advanced democracies still were highly similar. Education institutions in all countries charged no or only very low tuition fees. It was not before the 1950s that the country's education systems developed in different directions. Some countries, especially Anglophone countries, for example the United States, but also Asian countries such as Japan, introduced considerable tuition payments already in the early post-war period. Other countries, particularly in Scandinavia and continental Europe, in contrast remained tuition-free. These developments were unrelated to the massive educational expansion that took place at the same time. Since the early 1970s, the average cost of tuition has steadily outpaced the growth of the average American household. This trend continued particularly under President Reagan's higher education policies in the 1980s. Likewise, there has been a steady decrease in federal funding for grants and a rise in the interest rates of most major student loans, leaving many students struggling to pay debt for years after graduation. College tuition for undocumented students. The Development, Relief, and Education for Alien Minors, DREAM, Act was introduced in the U.S. Senate. It would allow the estimated 50,000 to 65,000 undocumented students in the United States to gain in-state tuition as well as a path towards American citizenship. The act would apply only to those students with tangible proof of residence in the United States before the age of 18. This act has stirred debate in numerous groups, including institutions, families, and the Senate itself. As of March 2013, undocumented students in most states were required to pay the higher out-of-state students' tuition charged at public universities, often between $20,000 and $35,000 at a local public university. In addition, these students were denied federal assistance as they lacked valid Social Security numbers. Because such students often come from comparatively poor families, the costs are too high to allow many undocumented students to seek university education in the United States. Tuition payments, also known as tuition fees, are the costs associated with attending an educational institution, typically a college or university. These payments cover the cost of instruction and other services provided by the institution. Tuition payments are fees charged by educational institutions, like colleges and universities, for instruction and related services. They are a primary source of revenue for many institutions, covering the costs of teaching, facilities, and support services. Tuition is typically separate from other costs like room and board, books, and supplies, which are collectively referred to as the cost of attendance. Tuition is the price that institutions charge for courses and publish in brochures and on their websites. This is referred to as the sticker price. Tuition fees are paid to educational institutions to cover the costs of delivering education and maintaining the learning environment. These fees contribute to various aspects of the educational experience, including faculty and staff salaries, facility maintenance, student services, and the provision of resources like libraries and computer labs. Thank you for watching this video.